Hello, welcome to the MOM series, The Misunderstanding of Multiplicity. My name is Maria, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the movie Split. And I know that I mentioned it in my last video, and it was about a few weeks before. It was about a month before the movie was coming out that I put that video out. And I talked about some other things, and I said in my video, I really didn't want to talk about Split, and that I didn't, because I didn't want to spoil the movie. Now I want to talk about it. Okay, so as you know, a lot of people in the MPD DID community have been out and about making all kinds of PSAs and writing the director and writing people that were involved in the movie, and originally tried to get the movie boycotted. I didn't jump on that bandwagon, and I'll tell you why. And I have had some interesting commentary that has come my way, because I want to be very, very clear about this. When I came out here in 2007-8, my whole purpose was to share having been diagnosed with MPD in 1986 and how the actual stigma and disability of being diagnosed that what is now called DID, how the actual real problem was how the media perceived it. The disinformation, the misconceptions, the legend, and the folklore. It wasn't the daily living. Find yourself a good therapist, do the work, get the tools, and you really can manage and be quite fine. And that's what I wanted people to know, is that you can lose everything in the therapy process, and if you pay attention to the media, the pop media, movies, books, true accounts, news interviews, any of that stuff, you can lose yourself in fear alone, in being just devastated and terrified of everything. The best way I can describe MPD DID is to say it is an extreme case of post-traumatic stress. And that there are times of disorder and there are times that it is not disordered. And like with anything, there are going to be times you have challenges with it and time that it's fine. So to put yourself into a label, to think that a person can't function because they're totally broken or split apart, or they don't make sense the way they are broken down and disintegrated in their personality, or to think that one has to go back and recover every little memory that may have caused that, every nuance of detail. It was really a backward way of thinking back in the day when therapy started. Now, when I started doing therapy for MPD years ago, they really mixed up two things together. They mixed up dissociative disorders and repressed memories with trauma. They put trauma, you went through a trauma, you must have a repressed memory, and the outward manifestation of that is you're doing dissociative behaviors. Now, what they've said is, and it makes more sense, is there are people on a continuum of dissociative behaviors, and under those dissociative behaviors are depersonalization, derealization, fugue states, amnesia. Amnesia would be the long end spectrum. It would be on the very end spectrum of not having any idea what you're doing from minute to minute always, and that's very unlikely and rare. But we didn't learn about that back then. Oh, no. They only knew one model, and that was a trauma model where essentially people that were diagnosed with multiple personality were totally unaware of what they were doing from one minute to the next. Now, the most terrible thing that I found in my life with being diagnosed with this, that I kept arguing with my doctor and saying that it just doesn't, I don't know. I mean, I've always known things happen in my background. So everybody's got trauma. Why would I get this and not someone else? And I really, really asked all those questions. I didn't just say, oh, okay, I have MPD, DID, whatever you want to call it. I knew, okay, I had kind of a chaotic childhood. I had enough traumas in my childhood that it made sense. But I didn't have to go in search of repressed memories. There was nothing that I didn't know. There were aspects of what I remembered of trauma always. I'm just going to lose the word trauma and just say bad times. That horrendous times, horrible times, frightening times. That I knew enough that I didn't have to have explained to me why everything happened. As I got older, I got to talk to people and find out why those things happened. And it didn't look so traumatic anymore. It looked like, well, they were doing what they needed to do, and I was doing what I needed to do. The entire experience of MPD DID is unique to everyone, but I really do believe when I came out here, that was my focus, was how is the media making it worse? How are we making it worse? All of us together, by the way we present to our doctors, because the doctors are the ones that are consulted whenever there's something on the media. So whenever you used to see TV shows where there was a character written into a script, usually the writers and the directors and producers would go research that plot and all of it for years and develop. It would be a writer's dream to have one person with a whole bunch of fragmented personalities and different personalities or whatever. A lot of research is done by writers to develop these characters. So, who is our real problem with? Not the writers. Not really. Not the producers. Not the directors. Because this is their craft. Is it hurtful sometimes? Yes. When I came out here in 2009, I really made up my mind. I wanted to be open and out about being diagnosed. United States of Terror had just come out, and there were only 3 other people that were out here talking about. One gal was talking about what was called DDNOS, dissociative disorder not otherwise specified. She was having dissociative features, which can be found in borderline personality and can be found in obsessive compulsive and can be found in panic disorder and can be found in all of these things bounce about. So one gal was out here talking about dissociativeness a little bit. But she kind of was all over the place. She was eating disorder. She was suicidal. She was harmful. She was borderline personality. It was just a running soap opera of continual how her life was going. And there was one other gal who was talking about having been diagnosed with multiple personality in 2010. She always knew that she was abused. She always knew that she was sexually abused. She always knew that she witnessed a lot of trauma. But she wasn't quite sure she was multiple until she was diagnosed. She didn't go and search the diagnosis. She actually was having a lot of panic attacks or whatever. And you can see her channel it started off being Sidians 3, now it's Tommy Jameson. She was out here talking about having been diagnosed, I believe it was in 2010. Or maybe you were diagnosed in 2000. I forget the date now. It was I'm sorry. It wasn't 2010. It was like 2001 you were diagnosed. And I could be wrong. But in the 2000 era. And then there was another lady in the UK, Denise, who was talking about having been diagnosed in 2006. We were the main people that were out here. There was one other gal who passed away last year, and she went by the name of Michaela, Mickey, Jamie, Leah, Leah, Mick. She had a channel called So Here We Are, and she had shared a lot, and then I think she backed off, feeling very uncomfortable about all she had shared. And we remained friends on Facebook, really good friends, and she passed away last year. Denise from the UK passed away in August it'll be 2 years. And her husband passed away, no, in May, I'm sorry. And her husband passed away, Alan, 3 months after her. He was her caretaker. He was a big person that was a truther that talked a lot about the Illuminati. Really tragic situation. And then there were like a few other of us that just kind of hung together in a tight community. And I was probably the only person, along with Sidians 3, that kept coming out here with the mosaic and talking about our daily life together. And I used the United States of Terror as a launching pad to every single week, after every episode, talk about what they got right and what they got a little more right in my own experience and in a lot of people's experiences, and what they got really wrong and what they really drove off the crazy train. Now, the reason that show was of interest to me was because I was part of the focus group where they actually questioned people that had been diagnosed back in the 80s. I was part of a group that was a focus group in the 90s, and they pulled up that information in data, and they grabbed people that were diagnosed in the 80s and in the 90s and brought them up to the 2000 current. And we were promised that show was going to be a happier look at the experience of DID, but in a dark comedy. But it was going to it was going to try to normalize it in families and look at how every family has something that's going on. Every person has a challenge, and it was going to diminish the stigma. Okay. What it did was it opened the door for everyone to talk. They had a special scriptwriter, Leah Peterson, who was diagnosed with DID, and she'd been diagnosed with many different things, but eventually diagnosed with DID. And she went to therapy and was integrated right before she became the specialist advisor scriptwriter. So she was in the writer's room at United States of Terror, and she worked very closely with Diablo Cody Brooke, and she worked with all the other writers, but there was only so much input she could give. Steven Spielberg was interested in, from a director, producer point of view, how he could direct an actor into a character, and how some people could come out of that character very easily and others kept it with them. And they adapted, and it became part of their personality. Interesting. Meanwhile, his wife had been studying the difference between bipolar and Kate. Why can't I think of her name right now? I'll think of it in a minute. I was going to say Kate Blanchett. It's not Kate. It's Kate Capshaw. I'm sorry. Kate Capshaw's wife was really interested in, is this a moodiness that somebody in her life was going through that was diagnosed? Was it a moodiness? Was it a bipolar situation? Or was it DID? And as a husband and wife, they began to talk about having a TV show about this, but wanting to do it justice. Dr. Richard Kluft, who helped write Diagnosing and Treatment of MPD DID back in the 80s, did the intro on Showtime, question and answer, and over on the National Institute for Trauma, they had a big facts about DID. Dr. Colin Ross, who was the celebrity doctor who was another pioneer doctor from back then, who was with the Institute, then left and started his own institute. He was their show advisor. If you go back to the United States of Terror and you look at the pilot, you'll see Dr. Colin Ross. If you look at like about, I think, 7 or 8 of those shows, you'll see Dr. Colin Ross advised on all of those. And they really ran that show off the train track at the end. And it ended up doing us more harm than good. All of us. The only thing it did do was it opened up awareness and talking again. And in my experience, I feel like there's been an over amount of awareness in everywhere, and in the UK especially. Can a TV show do that? Sure it can. This would be the same thought of when the movie 3 Faces of Eve came out, did everybody get interested in it? And then all of a sudden, you know, there were women showing up at doctors' doors professing to be like Eve. And then you had Sybil Dorset. And then after Sybil, the show Sybil, did everybody... Well, no, I don't really believe that. I don't believe that could go on for a long period of time without a therapist being a truly professional one being able to figure that out. However, I do believe that there are some shows that bring more awareness and over-awareness and over-diagnosis and misdiagnosis. So I'm very, very cautious about what I review out here. There was a time I reviewed anything if there was music lyrics, if people in the music industry were saying they were multiple, if somebody was saying they were bipolar and they had DID and they had all these different personalities and they were this and they were that. I was coming out making videos all the time, but mostly I was following the United States of Terror and everything in the media, everything. I really backed away from Split because I have taken a lot of time to get to know the writer Michael Knight Shyamalan. He is a twisted writer. He is the mind bender. He has had a lifelong interest. In his own words, he is, then I'll give you links for articles if you want them. He has spoken in interviews that he has had a lifelong interest in multiple personality. It was just something, even before he became a writer, he was always interested in. His parents are doctors. He interviewed and wrote in his notes for 15 years all the information he could get from therapists and from very well-known doctors who had real cases, what multiplicity was and what it was not. Back when it was MPD, and then when it became DID, he interviewed several different doctors that are very well-known experts. So who is our problem really with? If we continue to say, well, Split is damaging, it's a bad movie, people will go to it and think that you're going to go kidnap people and kill them and then cannibalize them. I don't care about spoilers, most people know this by now. Kill them and everything else. Right. One, as a director and a writer, he was looking to make a prequel and a sequel. And you can see that, and that is the big surprise in the movie at the end. You're like, ah. And I'll tell you, when I went to see it, there were people in the I mean, I was just going, ah. The whole thing, I was like, ah. Oh. I couldn't even eat my popcorn. I was just like, I wanted to throw my popcorn a lot of times at the screen. So I was like, where is he going with this? Ah, I know where he's going with this. Okay. At the very end, it all came together, and even though you had more questions at the end, that's the way he wants to leave it. It's going to make a ton of money. are people going to walk away thinking really that the horde, the beast, that really is what your neighbor, your relative, your mother, your sister, your brother, your husband, your wife, your daughter, your niece, your cousin is when they say they were diagnosed with multiple personality or dissociative identity disorder? No. What a lot of people have, I don't think so. What a lot of people are peeving about is there's a dialogue in the movie where the character that plays the character of Kevin's psychiatrist actually reads text print about physiological changes that people can go through under extreme stress and trauma when they switch. And she's talking about when the 24th personality comes out. One, it's not unusual for there to be very large groups. It used to be thought anything over 7 was, rare and weird, and that's why I never liked talking about numbers. Majority of groups out there have well over 20. Even Chris Kastner, when she wrote her 2 books, she talked about there were always 20s, more than that. Trudy Chase with the Troops, hundreds. Billy McGillen, that story will be coming out soon. Crowded Room, large group. It's not unusual. Pet peeves. They took something that they're not even sure is fact and twisted it into fact. They took a info of, okay, like say one personality, personal ego aspect, alter, or person, what I call person, is blind, and another comes out and is not. Is that demon possession, or is that a superpower? Is that like one can see much better and one is disabled? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But I think that the main thing I wanted to say about the movie Split, and I know a lot of people are coming out saying, I was diagnosed DID like last year and I'm not this way. You don't even know what you are yet. And that's all I want to say, is you don't know. If you were just diagnosed last year, you don't know what you are yet. The other thing I wanted to say is be very careful. We need to all be careful when we chastise. And I learned this the hard way when I was in. Those of you that will remember. I was really passionate about them getting United States of Terror right. And I can remember going home and after watching it at a friend's house or watching it here. I really didn't even want to watch it alone. Sometimes I'd watch it at a friend's house. Or I'd watch it here, and then I'd talk to my a few friends or family member or whatever. And my daughter would always say to me, Mom, but that's not you. That's a TV show. It's okay. We know you're not like that. And my son would say the same thing. And my friends would say, but we know. And I'd be like, no, because people really do think that. They really are afraid. They really do think these things. And they do. Because the hardest part with being diagnosed multiple or just DID is that people think you don't remember from minute to minute. So really, you become the victim all over again because people are getting all kinds of stuff over on you, they think. And if you play along, if you kind of go, okay, you're saying I was another personality then. All right. That was me just being angry. I had so many times where people would say, "Oh, well, you probably don't remember, but you switched and you were horrible." And really, that was me. I was there. I said that to you. Or, "Oh, well, you didn't," or I called you. I told you what you don't remember. Or I mentioned it. You were there. You must have been splitting or switching. Yeah. Or, "Oh, I told you we weren't going to do this, or we were going to," I mean, everything is questioned. Your sanity is questioned from now on, because if people think that you can't remember from 1 minute to the next, you don't remember what took place the last time you were together, because you have these amnesic things happening, and as long as you're switching, you must automatically be experiencing amnesia. And if you're switching and you're able to communicate with each other and have cohesiveness and co-running and co-consciousness, then you must not be multiple. You must be faking. As long as people have those things confused, they're never going to get it right. And the real problem, the real disadvantage and disability is not being taken seriously, never being trusted, and also others lying about you. So the real stigma is allowing it to be misrepresented by you and me. Continuing to present as always being unaware of when something bad occurred will continue that. Continuing to present as if that's not your feeling or behavior, it's someone else's, when maybe it is yours, will continue that. Your doctor will follow your lead. I hear a lot of people talking about, and I said this before, that they want their doctor to really understand trauma and disassociation. Why? It's age old. It's age old. They have globbed a lot of things together to make it become something it doesn't need to be. Everybody goes through stuff. And nobody knows what makes a trauma be a trauma to one person and manageable to another, or a trauma they can't get past, or one that they're going to have flashbacks about, or one that impacts them so badly that they're going to get a trigger every now and again. Nobody knows what's going to make that for you or for me. One person may go through life being molested as a child and beaten, and they will adapt to it. Abused children adapt to abusers. Okay? They find a way to adapt. Now, what psychiatry is telling us with MPD is that they adapt by going into other, but some don't. Some just adapt. For a long time, with the DSM committees, they have questioned, is DID an adjustment disorder, or is it a result of only trauma? And does it have to only be one kind of trauma? They finally know it could be medical procedures, it could be loss, grief, death of other people, it could be witnessing the abuse of another, it could be one-time really bad trauma that you just can't get out of your mind. That just always comes back. How far on the continuum could it go? It could be post-traumatic stress, and what would that look like? In the same situation, you could be triggered and feel kind of like just really scared, panicky, sweaty, panic attack, nauseous, icky, or it could be complete avoidance, or it could be a derealization come over you, or a depersonalization, where all of that is part of a panic attack anyways, but it doesn't have to be for everyone. All of those things can be part of a panic attack. You can experience derealization, depersonalization, numbing, nausea, sweating, and paralyzation, all of that during a panic attack. And some people will just experience like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Oh my God, like sheer, like a sheer dread that just comes over them out of nowhere. Almost like a premonition. So everybody's experience is different within all these experiences. So to try to pin it all down is really, really hard. And what they try to do is make a medical trauma model, which is very profitable, and which is going to have all kinds of academies and schools for study of trauma and disassociation, and already does everywhere. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with specializing in trauma and disassociation. But specialists tend to look for what they specialize in. And if you think you have some of the symptoms of disassociating, you will go to a specialist and you may just get misdiagnosed. That's a freebie. That's just a bonus I'm throwing in there. So the movie Split, the only pet peeve I had about it was they used the concept of multiple personality and Kevin having extreme post-traumatic stress and then multiple personality. They used his therapist doctor as speaking as if it was true and fact, and they used some real quotes from books that you can go back and quote as fact, but they took it out of context for what they showed. Did that sound for what they depicted on screen of what he was doing? It's like that with any mental health label in the movies. It really is. So I'm not really into the belief system that we need to school producers and directors about what MPD, DID is and isn't anymore. I think we need to be very, very careful and honest about how we frame and shape our experience and present it to our doctors, because there are doctors that are advising the writers. They're saying, I really have a case that is this extreme and this rare. It's rare, it's extreme, it's an extravagant case. It's very extraordinary, this one, but yeah, they do act this way. This has happened. Does anybody cannibalize anybody or kill anybody? No. Okay. Can people act like an animal? Yeah. Can people do incredible feats? Yeah. But I think what adrenaline and hormones are very, very powerful. Emotion, all of that. I have a lot I wanted to talk about that. I've always thought about when the Bible talks about Jesus sweating blood from being anxious. Can you sweat blood from being anxious? Yes, you can. Physiologically, you can. That was not some miraculous thing that happened. A person can get so anxious that they can sweat blood. What's really happening is their blood pressure they're so anxious, they're so constricted that their blood vessels are just breaking and they burst and they bleed. Sort of like when I won't even say childbirth, but if you've ever been in childbirth and you've had to do a lot of pushing for a long time, a lot of times the thin blood vessels in your face will break through and you can really see them. Jesus was under so much agony and stressed that he sweat blood. That's how the story goes. Okay. Did he have supernatural powers? Yeah, he did, because he raised people from the dead. And I think what Michael Knight, I think what Michael Shyamalan was really playing with was crafting the character to have all these different personalities that the girls that were trapped by him had to get to know in order to try to get free. But really, what I asked myself when I left the movie theater after 3 times of seeing it now is, okay, wait a minute. Who gave Kevin the idea that he was multiple in the first place? Because he was a man that was going through trauma. He had been in a war. And then I looked at the therapist's life, and she was kind of an eccentric and not taken very seriously. And this was her big moment to be taken seriously. There were a lot of different things going on in that movie. And it was I can't think of her name right now, the main gal in the movie that realizes he might be someone different. And she explains to the other 2 girls, I think he's got multiple personality. Now, who does it behoove to believe that? Behooves the girls that are captive. They're thinking, if we're not just dealing with this person who kidnapped us, but we're dealing with others that we can get free. Maybe the little kid will let us out. Maybe the matronly mother will let us out. Maybe I think they probably go through 9 or 10 of them that they actually show. And it's almost like Kevin, and you don't catch it, it's very, very subtle, thinks about the others and starts becoming that after the doctor tells him, I think you are operating with more than one person, and another person came here and emailed me and this and that. And I think that then gives him permission. And I think it's that way with a lot of people that are diagnosed. Just something to think about. My own personal thought was this has more to do with superpowers. Michael Knight's really need to make a comeback in a big way and pull together Unbreakable and move on to another movie too. It is a sequel and a prequel. And if we look at all of the super heroes like Batman and Superman and Spider-Man and Batman and Robin and Incredible Hulk. And remember in the beginning I said there's like Incredible Hulk situation going on there. Do you remember the guy who played the Incredible Hulk would only like blow up in his clothes, and his clothes would rip off and he would turn green and muscly and turn into the Hulk when somebody was getting hurt unjustly, and he needed to take care of that and fix that situation. Same thing or he was being really, 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 really stressed to a certain degree, then he would become the Hulk. But it was for the better of somebody else. Always had nothing to do with him. They had to do with everybody else being okay. So it was a superhero. Same thing with Superman, but he had stuff in his background that made him be that way. Batman and Robin, every superhero had trauma they went through, and they could have chosen to either become the Joker or what is it, Mr. Freeze, or all those other, Mr. Penguin, all the villains, or they could have chosen to be superheroes. They got superpowers. They had trauma in their background. The villains, same thing. All of them had trauma in the background. They could have chosen to do good or chosen to do bad. And interestingly, if you look back at Batman and Robin, Spider-Man, Catwoman, Wonder Woman, they all have their nemesis. They all have their people. They all know each other. It's like they lived together in the hood way back then. Go see Batman Under the Hood. You'll read it. You'll understand what I'm talking about. There's a background and a psychology that brings these traits out. So I really think that what Michael Shyamalan was playing with was he was using the multiple personality as conduit to super evil or good. What are you going to choose? There and the next movie will probably continue to develop on. Then I also thought this entire movie could have been taking place in the guy on the subway. I won't run it for everybody. In his head, because it looked like he was just sitting on the subway reading his paper and just kind of daydreaming. And then it could have been the guy in his kitchen. So you don't know if any of that actually really happened. Could have just been conjured up in those two men's minds who we saw in Unbreakable. So it was a real continuation. Sorry and sad that they had to use a character with multiple personality or dissociative identity disorder, DID. I think it's going to make a lot of money. I think to continue to fight it and try to prove what's wrong about it, what's right about it, is just going to be like knocking our heads against the wall. A Crowded Room is going to be coming out, and Leonardo DiCaprio is going to definitely be playing in the starring role, and that is not going to be anything like what we know it to be either. And those were real people, real doctors, real interviews. So there will always be sensationalizing there for entertainment purposes. Does there have to be demonizing and making horror films out of it all? No. I think the very best movie that ever came out about multiple personality is Frankie and Alice. True story, and it really does explain. Voices Within, Trudy Chase and the Troop story, the Chase story. Miniseries, but you can get it on trudychase.com in DVD or VCR or whatever. I think they have both. Go to trudychase.com, or you could see it right on here on YouTube. And even though there's some tough things to watch in that movie, you walk away knowing that Trudy is perfectly fine with her group, with the troops. They grow up together. They make sense together. They live fine together. They're healthy. And they go on. Functioning. So there are going to be these really crazy high box office movies that are going to come out every now and again. And it's sad that he used a person with multiple personality, but I think for me, I can see that that's just psycho thriller filler, trying to fiction, trying to make it appear as though it's true. But the real issue is, who are the experts of MPD DID? We can't have it both ways. We cannot say, don't believe that movie, and then the actual doctors that they got all the true information from that they used to write with, are the same doctors that we profess are telling us truth and fact. In other words, I've heard a lot of younger girls out here that are between 15. I talked to one girl the other day. She was 12 years old. She self-diagnosed herself at 12, went into a DID unit and told them she thought she had different personalities. And they told her she had DID. She's never been seen by another doctor. She doesn't know. She saw it on TV. She saw a lot of people on the internet. She said, I think that's what I got. That kind of flippant diagnosing is bad. Another young girl wrote me, and she told me that her sister was definitely bipolar. Definite. And that she doctor hopped all over. And that now she met another doctor who, because they had moved 3 times when she was younger, said that was trauma. That was trauma. They moved. She lost all of her friends 3 times. They moved 3 times. And she may very well have other personalities. It's gotten a little cuckoo. It's gotten a little overdiagnosed again. And this was sort of how it was in the 80s. If a woman walked into the doctor's with a headache, a little bit of just complaining about time. Like, time's racing, time. I can't keep track of time. It's just going so fast. They said anything like that, you were on the checklist. Ooh, that could be MPD, DID. That could be MPD. They didn't even call it DID then. And it led to overdiagnosis. Then it led to lawsuits and a big sham, and then it led to nobody believing it existed. So now I feel like there's an over-validating going on of everybody trying to prove DID exists, but still the same information. They have nothing new. They've just specialized it more. They've taken it apart and said, okay, dissociating is part of it. Derealization is part of it. Depersonalization can be part of it. Amnesia can be part of it. Fugue states can be part of it. Panic disorder is always part of it. Grief can be part of it. Anxiety can be part of it. They've just kind of like broadened, and I said this, if you go back to my videos from United States, I said they're broadening the label by renaming it DID in 1994. They tried to get all these little things under the umbrella so that they could treat more people, okay? Because they couldn't treat people by just saying they have multiple personality. Nobody wanted to hear that anymore. There were, half the psychiatric system was going everywhere. And the other half was like, no, I know it's multiple personality. But if you got a bunch of system groups or people together talking about their experience, some would say, we know what each other's doing at all times. We have found a way to co-communicate. We can voluntarily switch and say, I would like to go, we can plan and say, I would like to go to the market next week. Can we put it in the schedule? One person in a group. So say you had a group and you had 3 women that loved to craft. And they said, we want to go to a craft bazaar. Can you fit it into a schedule? And everybody would sit and work out a way of, okay, we're going to... And some are just along for the ride. But they go. That's how you co-communicate. Those are the tools that you actually learn in therapy to communicate. And a lot of people don't realize that when you're doing that, your doctor has taught you to be engaging with the other alter personas and chit-chatting with them internally, online, dialoguing. A lot of times when I'm on Facebook, and I always get embarrassed about this, and I'll quick delete it, but we used to be told we could only write back and forth to each other and journal. And journaling was a good way to keep communication going and to work out internal conflict. Or we were always told we were in conflict, but we weren't always in conflict. A lot of times everybody was getting along great. Everybody was on the same page and everything was cool. And had a lot of the same likes and drew from each other's strengths and helped each other in their weaknesses. And we worked as a big group family. And I remember when doctors started talking to each other about try to hear the other person. And I would be like, well, what do you want me to try to hear? Another part of me that I'm conflicted with internally? What if that's just another opinion or another strong opinion or just part of the I'm figuring it out process? Does that have to be a person? And because it was things like I want to go to this family event. I don't want to go to this family event. I really want to go. I can't imagine my life without going to this family event. I want to see everyone that's there. I could imagine my life without going. I don't want to be there. It was that kind of strong conflict. Like, the whole family's getting together for a family reunion. We're going. I'm not. Inside, there'd be this little, I'm not going. Oh, no. And it'd be, of course we're going. No, not going. Okay, so that would be what I would take to the journal. Why don't you feel like going? Who are you? What? Are you anybody or are you just me? Are you just me? Am I just conflicted? A lot of times I'll be writing on Facebook and along will come somebody who just, internal dialogue, stream of consciousness, it'll keep going. And they don't even sign their names anymore. They don't even put an initial. One does. And that's it. And I just have to figure it out. And sometimes I will figure out that it was me. So, don't let it get too overwhelming. Sometimes it really is you and not another alter persona, alter part ego person. And seriously, when it's all said and done, we are the media, you and I. And how you present to your doctor is what makes the biggest difference. How you present to your husband, your wife, your children, your loved ones. Again, our problem is not with Hollywood and the writers. Although they don't have to go as far out as they do, or the actors, or the directors. The problem really is with where are they getting their information? And when you go and do your research, you're going to find out they researched a long time. Some of these directors and producers researched longer than the news we're getting on the TV. 15 years of talking to very, very well-known therapists. This is what he came away with. 15 years of working on a character with 24 distinct personalities. Years of an interest in multiple personality before he was even a director. Not wanting to harm a population that's already stigmatized. Wanting people to go outside of the box of what multiple personality is, they think. This is what he came up with. This is what M. Night Shyamalan came up with. I think it went so far off the train track that we can safely say, yeah, that's not how people are. And I wouldn't ever tell anybody else not to waste your efforts, but the real work needs to be done with the doctors that are the advisor script writers and the specialized script writers that are saying, I experienced my life as multiple or as more than one or with DID, and they're helping to write the scripts. They're sharing their experiences and how it can be, or they're saying how they heard it could be from another group. There's a lot of like almost like phone tag going on for these people that I've just come to realize that wake up every day, you have an opportunity to present as healthy or present as scary. Present as responsible or irresponsible. If you go to your doctor and you're always broken and falling apart and disintegrated and unable to function, that's what they're going to write down their experience of you with multiple personality is. When really, I think a lot of people just need to heal from their wounds, and then really the multiplicity has nothing to do with it. When I came out and I talked to you guys about The Creature of Habit, A Journey by the Troops to Trudy Chase, the second book that they wrote and wanted to publish, that Kari Ainsworth, Trudy Chase and the Troops' daughter, published after their death. The main takeaway from that book, even though it's a big book and it is an expensive book, the takeaway from that book is the problem was never being multiple or MPD, DID. The problem was, how do I move on from this wounding together or alone? How do we all move on, or how do I move on? How's creature move on? Creature of habit. Because you've already learned to do what's comfortable. So how do you move on from a wounding? You've done what you need to stay safe. How do you move on from that wounding? So I'm going to say again, the best book you can read right now is Creature of Habit, A Journey by the Troops for Trudy Chase. And the best movie you're ever going to be able to tell a friend or a family member to see is going to be Frankie and Alice and Voices Within. Every other movie is just, no. It's just soap opera, fluff, superhero, villain, horror flick, sci-fi, psycho thriller, psycho. And I said, this is going to be like Incredible Hulk meets Psycho meets horror meets yeah. And it's probably going to win a ton of awards because the cinematography in it was done beautifully. I don't know what it's called, when the way they shot the film, the narrowness of the rooms is very cinematic. The music they used was perfect. The takeaways, the way the movie was shot, the film, all of it, and when you see the ending of it and realize, oh, he gotcha, like, oh man, that's what this was. Literally, the theater I was in, which is a very boring theater, nobody's ever even there, I was in there for a matinee. The last, I'd say, 9 minutes in the movie, people were screaming at the movie and standing up and applauding and going, yeah! Like, I mean, they were just on their feet. And as people were walking out, they were saying, oh my God, I gotta get so-and-so, we gotta come back to this movie. They're not gonna believe it. So, Is it already on its way? Yeah. It's going to make a fortune. It's going to go down in history as one of those multiple personality movies. But what can we do about it? Nothing. But keep telling our truth and keep being the media. Keep showing that you're not a beast. You're not a demonic, horrific person that's possessed. Although, you can't have it both ways. If you want to come out here and claim that you're possessed and that you have a bunch of demons in your group and then say, oh, but I'm not a demon, I'm not possessed, you know, you can't have it both ways. And there are groups out there that have demons in their group. They name them demons. They say, oh, they're evil, they're demons, they're possessed. So it's all subjective. It's how you perceive yourself to be. If you're somebody that believes other persons being along for the ride in your life means that you're you're evil, or you've sinned, or you need to be delivered of some sin, the pain will never go away. You'll just always have more pain in your life. You'll just always be bopping yourself in the head with holy water and saying, be healed. I'm not going to pick the sign of the cross over you. Going to one prayer meeting after another, making somebody rich. And just be who you are. Be who you are and be happy. Okay, that's my very long video finally about Split. And maybe I'm just getting too old to let it all bother me now. I'm looking forward to A Crowded Room coming out. I think the acting was phenomenal by James McAvoy in this movie, Split. I think it was exactly what Michael Night Shyamalan's movies are all about. And yeah, it's going to be a cult following for this movie. Keep speaking your truth. Keep it true. Don't reshape your group or your situation or your emotional makeup because there's another person out here who's telling you what MPD DID is. Don't do that. Don't go to a support group, of which there are 5 million support groups now for DID, and get on a thread where some people are talking in little speak, and so then you think you have to start talking in little speak. Don't do monkey do monkey. Don't do that. Don't. Just be authentic. Just be you. And don't try to be politically correct multiple. Just stay you, okay? And you'll be okay. And if you're with others, honor them, respect them, negotiate with them, talk with them, get to know them. You'll find out they really are just part of your personality makeup. They're really not separate entities that can go off and do whatever the heck they want. You really do all have more control of managing your life together than you give yourself credit for. Okay, that's all I wanted to say for right now. Take care. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. And happy February. And Valentine's Day coming up tomorrow. Bye-bye.